everyone! Today I wanted to talk about an issue that is near and dear to my heart, namely the past and the future of the American labor movement. I think that even in a time of incredible political polarization, across partisan lines, many United States citizens essentially believe that people, not indirect corporate or distant corporate power, should decide our lives and decide the future of this country. We're taught that a democracy lives in government buildings or that it's an indirect, impersonal process, but I believe that real democracy is closer and more attainable than we think. Unions are more than just relics of the past. In a time of incredible political polarization, unions have the opportunity to act as a microcosm or a miniature scale of the democratic process. They're places where people organize, people elect leaders, and hold this leadership directly accountable. They provide a higher platform upon which to speak out and to dream of a better American future for all. When authoritarianism is on the rise, when AI threatens to automate millions of jobs, when faith in government is crumbling, we need to take another look at how organizing our labor movement might just help us save our democracy. Let's start with some history. Unions in America have never, ever had it easy. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, workers, often immigrants, were exploited, overworked, and incredibly disposable. They operated in 12, 14-hour shifts, there was child labor, there were not any safety standards. People died fighting for the right to manage their own productivity and control the course of their own life. They recognized that these corporations are engineered only to make a profit, and without radical action, their exploitative methods would have continued. The working world we see today is the product of decades of collective bargaining and action. Some of the wins that these people were able to achieve are not even recognized as wins anymore. Things like the 8-hour workday, the 9 to 5, having weekends, having safety regulations or safety standards at work, having a federal minimum wage. By the 1950s, 1 out of every 3 American workers was in a union. And unions didn't just help their members, they lifted standards across the board for every American. Higher wages, better benefits, a stronger middle class. And what we're seeing today is a shrinking middle class. So unions have the opportunity to act as the antidote to this shrinkage. They didn't just fight for paychecks or better pay, they fought for human dignity. However, starting in the late 20th century, things started to change with a shift away from the New Deal economic regime into the neoliberal economic regime. And in 1981, President Ronald Reagan fired more than 11,000 striking air traffic control workers. That moment was unique in the history of the United States because before then, during the New Deal era, the government was largely sympathetic to the plight of unions and operated as a kind of third person in this collective bargaining power between corporations and the unions. That moment sent a message that the government would no longer stand behind the interests of organized labor. Looking for cheaper labor, industries searched abroad for populations where minimum wage was low and unregulated, and in doing so, they were able to circumvent the strict labor legislation present in the United States and stiff large manufacturing working populations. This exposed a major fault line in the organized labor movement, that organized labor can only exist and sustain itself when working positions are readily available. Since this shift into the neoliberal economic order, which we are still operating in, union membership has steadily declined. Corporations continue to outsource jobs overseas, automation began replacing workers, and companies invested millions in union-busting strategies. Today, Trump is desperately trying to reshore so much of the manufacturing industry that we deliberately let slip through our fingers. Today, only about 10% of American workers are unionized. In the private sector, it's even lower. That decline didn't just weaken paychecks, it weakened our democracy. It weakened worker power. Despite these statistics, a new generation and a new movement is beginning. People are demanding democratic control over the conditions of their labor, which is why I'm urging you to consider joining this movement and consider researching labor organizations near you, because there are 2 massive threats on the horizon. The first is authoritarianism. In times of inequality, people feel abandoned by institutions. They get angry, they get afraid, and they start looking for strong men, leaders who promise control, promise order, can provide a scapegoat for the country. That's how democracies erode. The second threat, artificial intelligence. AI has the capacity to tremendously improve our world, but only if we use it in a deliberate and controlled manner, where we regulate what we are doing with AI and we regulate the industries that it affects. AI isn't just coming for manual labor, it's coming for white-collar jobs too. It will continue to shrink the middle class and provide even more of a stretch between the lower class and the upper 1%. Who's deciding how AI gets used? A few billionaires in Silicon Valley, not the workers whose actual lives will be upended. So that is the danger of a country without a strong union base. Decisions get made about us, but not with us. So what makes unions different? What makes unions a microcosm of democracy? Unions are run by their members. It's one of the only institutions where working class people actively practice democracy, not every few years, but every week. Unions teach people how to organize, how to debate, how to compromise, how to lead. And they train us for the very skills that democracy requires and puts to the test. In a time when people feel politically powerless, unions remind us that collective action still works. Since COVID, it seems that the distinction between work and between leisure is gradually shrinking. With more people working online or working remotely, bosses feel that they can contact their employees at any time that they choose. But that is a huge invasion of privacy and of personal autonomy. So here's the bottom line. If we want a democratic society, a truly democratic society, we can't ignore what happens at work. We can't ignore the conditions of our labor and the exploitation of our time and energy. If we let that space become dominated by unaccountable bosses and algorithms that are unchecked, that warp our perceptions of the world, we're giving away more than our wages. We're giving away our power. Two great resources are the American Federation of Labor and Congress of Industrial Organizations. It's a federation of 63 national and international labor unions representing over 15 million people in the United States. And another great resource is the Industrial Workers of the World. They have incredible educational resources and incredible training tips on how to get organized, how to organize your workplace, and how to be a strong, resilient member of the working class American movement. In conclusion, the American labor movement has experienced a profound decline in both membership and public visibility over the past several decades. The idea has undergone a diminishing or a weakening of stature. What once stood so tall in the public imagination in an economy now operates as a fringe movement attached to neither American political party. This weakening has been neither accidental nor inevitable. Rather, it reflects a sustained effort by entrenched corporate power and political opposition to erode the collective bargaining power of workers. At its core, the labor movement has the capacity to act as a microcosm of democracy, challenging hierarchical systems that rely on the compliant labor of the working class. We now have the opportunity to reinvigorate the labor movement as a response to rising American authoritarianism and threats by digital automation. Unions were once seen as an affront to the freedom of capitalism and the freedom of the free market by an authoritarian and communist scare. However, new union activists for the 21st century profess the true freedoms that unions have the capacity to afford. So in the face of rising authoritarianism and unregulated economic turbulence, unions may be once again positioned as vital engines powering democratic renewal. Thank you.